Captain Dae-ho Kim stared through the bridge window at the twisted metal floating in space. 3 hours ago, this had been New Busan Colony. 3 million people had called this place home. Now there was nothing but debris and silence. "Captain, we're picking up a survivor pod," said Lieutenant Hyojin Park from the communications station. Her voice was steady, but her hand shook as she worked the controls. "Bring them aboard immediately," Dae-ho ordered. He turned to his tactical officer. "Any signs of the attackers?" "No, sir. Whatever hit the colony is long gone. But Captain, you need to see this." Ensign Kai-tae Lee transferred his readings to the main screen. "The attack pattern is precise. They hit the communication arrays first, then the power stations, then the residential sectors. This wasn't random destruction. This was systematic." Dae-ho felt ice in his stomach. New Busan had been a peaceful farming world. The colonists grew crops that fed half the outer rim. They had no military value, no strategic importance. They were just farmers trying to make a living in the frontier. The survivor pod docked with their ship 20 minutes later. Dr. Hyunwoo Lee stumbled onto the bridge, his clothes torn and his face covered in soot. He was the colony's chief agricultural scientist, a man who spent his days developing better ways to grow food in harsh conditions. "Doctor, what happened here?" Dae-ho asked gently. Hyunwoo collapsed into a chair, his whole body trembling. "They came without warning. Big ships bigger than anything I've ever seen. They didn't even try to communicate with us first. They just started shooting." "Who were they?" Lieutenant Park asked. "The Vorthak hegemony. I recognized their ship designs from the databases." "But why would they attack us?" "We're just farmers. We've never hurt anyone." Dae-ho exchanged glances with his officers. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as aggressive expansionists, but they usually targeted military worlds or resource-rich planets. New Busan had nothing they could want. "Doctor, did they make any demands? Any attempt to negotiate?" Hyunwoo shook his head. "Nothing. They appeared in our system at dawn. By noon, everything was gone. I only escaped because I was in the deep fields testing new grain varieties. My research station was small enough to avoid their sensors." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. If the Vorthak were targeting civilian colonies now, nowhere was safe. "Captain," came a voice from the communication station. "We are receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Sujin Park is en route with the 5th Fleet." "Put her through," Dae-ho said. Admiral Park's face appeared on the main screen. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. "Captain Kim, what's your status?" "All survivors recovered, Admiral. We have one witness who can tell us what happened." "Good. I need you to secure that debris field until we arrive. Nothing gets in or out without my permission." The Admiral paused, her expression growing darker. "Captain, this wasn't the only attack. The Vorthak hit 4 other colonies in the past 6 hours. All agricultural worlds. All defenseless." Dr. Hyunwoo looked up sharply. "Admiral, may I speak?" "Go ahead, Doctor." 6 months ago, the Vorthak sent representatives to our colonies. They wanted to purchase our agricultural technology. New seed variants, soil enhancement techniques, climate control systems. We offered to share the knowledge freely, as we always do. They refused. They said they wanted to buy exclusive rights. "And you said no," the Admiral stated. "Of course we said no. Food technology belongs to everyone. We've never kept our farming advances secret. It's against everything we believe in." Admiral Park nodded grimly. "And now they're taking it by force." The communication channel crackled as another voice joined the conversation. "Admiral, this is President Nare Choi." Everyone on the bridge straightened. The president of the Terran Federation rarely spoke directly to field commanders during active operations. "Madam President," Admiral Park replied. "Admiral, I've just finished speaking with the Vorthak ambassador. They've made their position clear. They want all human agricultural patents transferred to their control immediately. They also demand that we submit to hegemony authority and accept their governance of all human worlds." Captain Dae-ho felt his blood turn cold. "What was your response, Madam President?" "I told them that humanity doesn't negotiate with terrorists. I also informed them that their attack on civilian targets was an act of war." "How did they respond?" Admiral Park asked. "They laughed at me. The ambassador said that humans are weak farmers who hide behind diplomacy, because we lack the strength to fight. He said we have 48 hours to comply with their demands, or they will systematically destroy every human colony until we surrender." Dr. Hyunwoo looked around the bridge with wide eyes. "But we are farmers. Most of our people have never seen combat. Our ships are designed for exploration and trade, not war. How can we possibly fight the Vorthak? President Choi was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Colder. Doctor, you've spent your life growing things, creating life from barren soil. That's noble work, and it's work we chose to do. But choosing to be farmers doesn't mean we forgot how to be warriors. Admiral Park leaned forward. Madam President, are you authorizing military action? I'm authorizing defense of our territory and our people. Admiral, you have full tactical authority. Use whatever means necessary to protect human colonies. Understood, Madam President. What about the rules of engagement? There was another long pause. Admiral, for 200 years we've followed strict rules about how we conduct ourselves in space. We've been careful not to appear threatening to other species. We've limited our military development to defensive systems only. We've chosen diplomacy over force at every opportunity. Yes, Madam President, those rules are suspended. The Vorthak want to see what humans are capable of when we stop holding back. I think it's time we showed them. The communication channel closed, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Captain Daeho looked at his crew. These were good people, trained for exploration and peaceful contact with alien species. They had joined the space service to see new worlds and make friends with alien civilizations. Now they were being asked to fight a war. Captain, Lieutenant Park said quietly, what do we do now? Before Daeho could answer, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Dozens of ships dropping out of hyperspace. The Fifth Fleet had arrived, but these weren't the exploration vessels and light cruisers that Daeho expected. The ships that emerged from hyperspace were massive, angular and bristling with weapons he didn't recognize. They moved with a precision that spoke of advanced technology and careful planning. These weren't the peaceful exploration ships that humanity showed to the galaxy. These were warships. Admiral Park's voice came over the communication system again. All ships, this is Fleet Command. Form up for combat operations. We have colonies to protect and enemies to defeat. Dr. Hyun-woo stared at the tactical display in amazement. Where did all these ships come from? I thought humanity only had a few dozen military vessels. Captain Daeho realized that he was about to learn things about his own species that he had never suspected. Doctor, I think we're all about to discover what humanity is really capable of. The war had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn that there was much more to human nature than farming and diplomacy. Commander Sang-ho Jeon guided his stealth ship through the outer edges of Vorthak space. His mission was simple but dangerous. Get close enough to their military bases to gather intelligence, then get out without being detected. What he found there would change everything. The first thing he noticed was the massive shipyards orbiting their primary world. Hundreds of warships in various stages of construction, but that wasn't what made his blood run cold. It was the other ships in the yards, ships that clearly belonged to other species. Recording all visual data, whispered his sensor operator, Corporal Ji-won Nam. Sir, those aren't just Vorthak designs. I'm seeing at least 12 different alien ship types. All of them being stripped for parts, Sang-ho observed grimly. He had seen this before, but never on such a massive scale. Take us closer to that debris field. As they drifted silently through space, the true horror became clear. The debris wasn't random wreckage from battles. These were the remains of entire civilizations. Sang-ho could identify passenger vessels, hospital ships, even school transports among the twisted metal. Commander, I'm picking up a data beacon, Ji-won reported. It's heavily damaged but still transmitting. Can you decode it? Working on it now, sir. After several minutes, Ji-won's face went pale. Sir, this is a distress signal from the Kalani Republic. It's dated 18 months ago. Sang-ho knew that name. The Kalani had been a peaceful trading civilization, known throughout the galaxy for their beautiful artwork and advanced medicine. They had simply vanished one day. No one knew what happened to them. Now he knew. The message says they were given an ultimatum, Ji-won continued. Submit to Vorthak rule and surrender all their technology, or face complete destruction. They tried to negotiate. And the Vorthak response? Total annihilation, sir. Every world, every ship, every space station. The message cuts off in the middle of a plea for help. Sang-ho felt sick. The Kalani had been good people. Their doctors had saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Their artists had created beauty that inspired entire civilizations. All of it gone because they wouldn't surrender their freedom. Sir, we're getting similar signals from other beacons in the field, Jiwan reported. The Thurian Commonwealth, the Zephyrian Alliance, the independent worlds of Sector 7, they're all here. How many civilizations? Sang-Ho asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. At least 17 different species, sir, all wiped out in the last century. Sang-Ho made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Take us into the field. I want to see everything. For the next 6 hours, they drifted through a graveyard of civilizations. Each beacon told the same story. The Vorthak would arrive and make demands. When those demands were refused, they would systematically destroy everything, not just military targets, but schools, hospitals, art museums, anything that made a civilization worth preserving. Commander, we need to leave, Jiwan urged. Our stealth systems won't hide us much longer. 1 more minute. Sang-Ho was staring at the wreckage of what had once been a children's hospital. The medical symbols were still visible on the twisted hull. I want to remember this. They slipped away from the graveyard just as a Vorthak patrol ship entered the area. The journey back to human space took 3 days, but it felt like a lifetime. Meanwhile, on the research station Harmony Point, Dr. Eugene Kwan was conducting her own investigation. She had managed to recover some Vorthak technology from the attack on New Busan, and what she found surprised her. The technology is impressive, she reported to her team, but it's not revolutionary. Their weapons are powerful but crude. Their armor is thick but inflexible. Everything is designed for overwhelming force, not tactical flexibility. Her assistant, Dr. Min Seo Park, looked up from her analysis. What does that tell us about how they fight? They're bullies, Eugene said simply. They rely on fear and superior numbers. They've probably never faced organized resistance because they always pick fights they know they can win. What about their ships? Big, slow, and heavily armed. Perfect for destroying defenseless colonies. Not so great for fighting an enemy that can shoot back. Eugene's analysis was interrupted by urgent news from the frontier. Captain Minho Bay was reporting from the border patrol ship Vigilant. 3 more colonies have gone dark, he transmitted to Earth Command. Haven Reach, New Seoul, and Prosperity Station. All agricultural worlds, all hit within the last 12 hours. The pattern was becoming clear. The Vorthak weren't just randomly attacking human colonies. They were specifically targeting the worlds that fed the galaxy. Without human food production, dozens of species would face starvation within months. On Earth, General Tae-Hyung Moon was having the worst day of his military career. For 30 years, he had overseen humanity's defensive preparations, always hoping they would never be needed. Now he sat in a secure bunker deep beneath the Colorado mountains, reviewing files that had been classified since humanity first reached the stars. Project Watchdog, he read aloud to his staff. Defensive satellite networks capable of protecting entire star systems. Status, ready for deployment. His aide, Colonel Sora Kim, consulted her tablet. Project Iron Fist. Automated manufacturing systems capable of producing war fleets in deep space. Status, ready for activation. Project Final Solution? The general asked, though he dreaded the answer. Weapon systems designed for complete sterilization of hostile worlds. Status, built, tested, and sealed pending emergency authorization. General Moon closed the file. Humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for war while hoping for peace. They had built weapons that could end civilizations, then buried them so deep that most humans didn't even know they existed. Sir, Colonel Kim said quietly, there's something else you need to see. She activated a wall display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Dozens of alien species were monitoring the situation between humans and the Vorthak. Some were placing bets on how quickly humanity would surrender. Others were quietly canceling trade agreements with Earth, not wanting to be associated with what they saw as the losing side. The Centauri Federation has officially declared neutrality, Colonel Kim reported. The Arcturian Trade Union is suspending all contracts with human worlds. Even the Procyon are keeping their distance. What about our allies? What allies, sir? Everyone thinks we're going to lose. They're cutting ties before the Vorthak decide to punish them for helping us. General Moon felt a cold anger building in his chest. Humanity had spent centuries being the galaxy's peacekeepers. They had shared their technology freely, defended weaker species from aggression, and solved conflicts through diplomacy instead of war. Now when they needed help, everyone was running away. His secure communication system chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Soo Jin Park. General, I need those weapons systems online now. The Vorthak just broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. What did they say? They announced that humanity has been given 48 hours to surrender unconditionally. After that, they will demonstrate what happens to species that defy the hegemony by destroying Earth itself. General Moon stood up slowly. Admiral, how long will it take to activate our dormant systems? 12 hours for the basic defensive networks. 24 hours for full offensive capability. Do it. And Admiral? Yes, sir? It's time the galaxy learned why humanity chose to be farmers instead of warriors. We're about to remind them that the most dangerous predator is one that chooses not to hunt. The general closed the communication channel and turned to his staff. For 200 years, humanity had been the galaxy's gentle gardeners. That was about to change. Colonel Kim, send a message to all fleet commanders. Operation Harvest Moon is now active. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. The countdown had begun, and the Vorthak had no idea what was coming for them. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that most humans didn't know existed, the greatest military minds of humanity gathered for the first unrestricted war planning session in 2 centuries. Fleet Admiral Dongjun Ko sat at the head of a massive table, surrounded by holographic displays showing every corner of human space. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Ko began, his voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. For the first time since the formation of the Terran Federation, we are planning for total war. The Vorthak hegemony has given us 36 hours to surrender. Instead, we're going to show them why humanity chose peace. General So Young Kang stood and activated the central display. Current Vorthak fleet strength, 847 warships spread across 12 star systems. Their main production facilities are located at Proxima Helix, protected by overlapping defensive grids. In a conventional war, it would take us 5 years to break through those defenses, added Marshal Wu Jin Choi. Fortunately, we're not planning a conventional war. Dr. Ji-hee Lim, Director of Advanced Weapons Research, took control of the presentation. What I'm about to show you has been classified above presidential level for the past century. Project Looking Glass Quantum Entanglement Communication Networks. The display showed a web of connections spanning the galaxy. Every human colony, every exploration ship, every trade vessel was connected by invisible threads of instantaneous communication. While other species still rely on faster-than-light messages that take hours or days to reach their destination, we've been operating as a single organism for decades. Every human commander in the galaxy can coordinate their actions in real time. Admiral Ko nodded approvingly. What else do we have? Project Shepherd, Dr. Lim continued. What the galaxy sees as peaceful agricultural ships are actually mobile manufacturing platforms. Each one can produce a full battle fleet within 72 hours. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Chief Engineer Kyung-ho Park spoke up. Doctor, how many agricultural ships do we currently have in service? 2,347. All positioned strategically throughout the galaxy under the guise of food distribution. General Kang whistled softly. That means we can produce over 2 million warships in 3 days. Actually, General, we can do much better than that. Dr. Lim smiled grimly. Project Genesis. Our colonies aren't just farming communities. Every single human settlement has been built around disguised military production facilities. We can manufacture entire fleets on any world we control. Marshal Choi leaned forward. What about weapons technology? Dr. Lim's expression grew darker. Project Reaper. Stellar manipulation devices capable of triggering controlled solar flares. Project Swarm. Nanotechnology clouds that can disassemble enemy ships at the molecular level. Project Kronos. Temporal displacement weapons that can remove targets from the timeline entirely. The room was completely silent now. These weren't just weapons of war. These were instruments of complete annihilation. Admiral Ko spoke carefully. Doctor, have these systems been tested? Extensively, sir. In uninhabited systems under the strictest secrecy protocols, every weapon has been proven effective and safe for our forces to deploy. Why were they developed if we never intended to use them? Dr. Lim was quiet for a moment. Because we learned from Earth's history, Admiral. Every species that survived did so by being prepared for war, even if they chose peace. We decided that humanity would never again be caught defenseless. The secure communication system activated, and President Nare Choi appeared on the main screen. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just received the Vorthak's final ultimatum. They're giving us 6 more hours to surrender. Then they begin systematically destroying our colonies. Madam President, Admiral Ko said, "We're ready to implement our defensive measures." Admiral, I didn't call to discuss defense. The Vorthak have made a crucial error. They've threatened to destroy Earth itself if we don't submit. That crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. General Kang stood. What are your orders, Madam President? Total war, General. No restrictions, no holding back. No mercy for those who would commit genocide. The Vorthak want to see what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be weak farmers. Let's show them. President Choi's image flickered as secure channels opened across the galaxy. All fleet commanders, all colony administrators, all research stations. This is Presidential Order 77 Alpha. Operation Harvest Moon is now active. God help us all. The connection closed, leaving the War Council in stunned silence. Well, Marshal Choi said finally, I suppose there's no going back now. Dr. Lim began entering commands into her console. Activating Genesis protocols across all colonies. Agricultural ships are receiving new manufacturing orders. Weapon systems are coming online. Admiral Ko turned to his communications officer. Send a message to Ambassador Yeon-Soo Ha at the Galactic Council. Tell her to prepare for one final diplomatic attempt. Sir, the Vorthak have already rejected all negotiations. This isn't for the Vorthak, Commander. This is for the galaxy. They need to understand that what happens next is not humanity's first choice, but our final choice. Across human space, the transformation began. On farming worlds that had fed billions for centuries, hidden factories emerged from underground complexes. Agricultural ships that had carried grain and livestock for decades opened concealed bays revealing construction facilities that defied physics. Captain Hae-won, Seo watched from the bridge of her grain transport as the ship around her began to change. The hull stretched and reconfigured. Weapon systems emerged from what had been storage compartments. The simple cargo vessel became something that looked like it could challenge gods, Captain, her first officer said in amazement. What are we now? We're what we always were, Commander. We're human. We just stopped hiding it. Similar transformations were happening throughout the galaxy. Every human presence, from the smallest research station to the largest colony, revealed their true nature. Humanity had been playing the longest game in galactic history, and now it was time to show their hand. General Moon received reports from across human space. Project Watchdog satellites deploying around Earth. Project Iron Fist manufacturing systems online in 40 systems. Project Final Solution weapons armed and ready. How long until we're at full combat readiness? Admiral Ko asked. 18 hours, sir, but we can begin operations in 6. The Vorthak deadline is in 5 hours. General Moon smiled for the first time in days. Then we'll be ready to give them our answer. In the depths of space, humanity prepared to remind the galaxy why the most successful predators are those that choose not to hunt until hunting becomes necessary. The Vorthak had awakened something that had been sleeping for centuries. They were about to learn the difference between choosing to be peaceful and being incapable of war. Ambassador Yeon-Soo Ha stood before the Galactic Council in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime. Representatives from 300 species filled the massive hall. Their attention focused on the small human woman at the central podium. The chamber had been built to make speakers feel tiny and insignificant. Today, Ambassador Ha felt anything but small. Honored representatives, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translator systems. I come before you with humanity's final diplomatic message to the Vorthak hegemony. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Everyone knew about the attacks on human colonies. Most expected humanity to surrender within hours. The Vorthak hegemony has engaged in unprovoked attacks against civilian targets. They have murdered 3 million innocent people. They have threatened to destroy Earth itself. Ambassador Ha's voice remained calm, but her eyes were steel. They have 14 standard galactic hours to respond to our terms. Councillor Thrix of the Zenthari Empire laughed openly. Terms, humans making demands? Your species grows vegetables and teaches children. What could you possibly threaten us with? Ambassador Ha turned to face the Zenthari representative directly. Councillor Thrix, your species has known humanity for 2 centuries. In that time, have we ever lied to you? No, but have we ever broken a treaty or failed to honor an agreement? Well, no, but Then believe me when I say this. Cease all hostilities against human territories immediately. Withdraw from all occupied systems within 12 hours. Provide full reparations for the civilians murdered at New Busan and other colonies. This is not a negotiation. This is a final ultimatum. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives from dozens of species began talking at once. Councillor Vex of the Regellian Consortium activated his speaking device. Ambassador Ha, with all respect to humanity's peaceful intentions, you have perhaps 50 warships in your entire fleet. The Vorthak possess nearly 1,000. How do you expect to enforce these demands? Ambassador Ha was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried across the silent chamber. Councillor Vex, you are correct that humanity has always appeared peaceful. We grow food, we build schools, we heal the sick. These are the things we choose to do because we believe they make the galaxy a better place. She paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of species humanity had fed, protected and aided for generations. But you have misunderstood our nature. We didn't become farmers because we were weak. We became farmers because we chose to nurture life rather than end it. There is a difference between cannot and will not. Councillor Thrix laughed again. Pretty words, Ambassador. But words won't stop Vorthak warships. You're right, Councillor. Words won't stop them. But we will. A new voice echoed through the chamber. Humans will try, and humans will fail. All eyes turned to see Ambassador Grex of the Vorthak hegemony entering the hall. The reptilian alien was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating. He moved with the confidence of a predator who had never met an equal. Supreme Commander Vrex sends his regards, Grex announced. He found the human ultimatum amusing. We have a message for the human colonies. The central display activated, showing the scarred face of the Vorthak military leader. Humans are cattle, Vrex stated bluntly. We will process your species as we see fit. Your colonies will burn, your homeworld will fall, and your survivors will serve us as slaves. This is the natural order. The weak exist to serve the strong. The display switched to live feeds from Vorthak fleets moving toward human space. Hundreds of massive warships bristling with weapons advancing like a plague across the stars. Any species that aids humanity will share their fate, Vrex continued. We have brought order to 17 civilizations. We will bring order to yours. The message ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Ambassador Ha looked around the room at faces filled with fear and resignation. These beings had watched 17 civilizations die, and they expected to watch humanity become the 18th. Thank you, Ambassador Grex, for making our choice clear. She activated her own communication device. President Choi, you have your answer. President Narai Choi's voice filled the chamber. Acknowledged, Ambassador. Execute Order Harvest Moon. The words meant nothing to the alien representatives, but Ambassador Ha knew they had just heard the death sentence of the Vorthak hegemony. All human assets. This is Presidential Authority 77 Alpha. The safety protocols are now suspended. Military Command has full authorization. Show them why we chose to be gardeners. Across the galaxy, the transformation began in earnest. Agricultural vessels that had been moving grain between worlds suddenly bloomed into configurations that hurt to look at. Ships folded through dimensions, revealing weapons systems that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The main display in the council chamber lit up with feeds from across human space. Counselor after counselor gasped as they watched peaceful farming ships transform into instruments of war that made Vorthak battleships look like toys. On the feed from the Kepler system, they watched a human grain transport extend into a configuration twice the size of a Vorthak dreadnought. Weapon ports opened along its hull like flowers blooming in fast motion. Impossible, whispered Councillor Vex. How long have you been hiding this? We haven't been hiding anything, Ambassador Ha replied. We've been exactly what we appeared to be. Farmers, teachers, healers. We simply chose to build our tools for peace, rather than display our capacity for war. Another feed showed human colonies activating planetary defense systems that rose from underground facilities. Massive cannon batteries that could crack moons emerged from what had been flower gardens. Shield generators that could protect entire continents hummed to life beneath children's playgrounds. Ambassador Grex stared at the displays in shock. This is impossible. Our intelligence networks have monitored humanity for decades. You have no military industry, no weapons research, no visible preparations for war, Ambassador Ha finished. Because we learned long ago that the most effective predator is one that doesn't look like a predator until it's too late. The feeds from human space continued to pour in. Manufacturing platforms that had been producing medical supplies and farming equipment retooled themselves in minutes to produce weapons that violated several known laws of physics. How? Counselor Thrix asked weakly. We spent 2 centuries asking ourselves a simple question. What if our choice to be peaceful was seen as weakness? What if our decision to feed the galaxy instead of conquering it was mistaken for inability to fight? Ambassador Ha gestured to the display showing human military assets coming online across dozens of star systems. So we prepared. We built weapons that could end civilizations, then buried them so deep that we almost forgot they existed. We disguised factories as farms, research stations as schools, defensive platforms as art installations. We became the most prepared species in the galaxy for a war we hoped would never come. The chamber was dead silent now. 300 species stared at the displays showing the true scope of human preparation. Fleets that numbered in the thousands. Weapons that could manipulate stars. Defenses that could turn planets into fortresses. The Vorthak want to see what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be harmless farmers. Ambassador Ha continued. Very well. But remember, all of you, what happens next was their choice, not ours. She activated her final communication. Admiral Park, you may begin operations. Acknowledged, Ambassador. All units weapons free. Let's show them why predators fear gardeners. The feeds from human space showed fleets unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen beginning to move. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that could reach across light years. Defenses that made planets invulnerable. Ambassador Grex was backing toward the chamber exit, his earlier confidence completely gone. This isn't possible. You're farmers. You grow food. Ambassador Ha smiled coldly. Yes, we grow food. We also grow tired of species that mistake our kindness for weakness. The Vorthak wanted to harvest humanity. Instead, they're about to learn what it means when the gardeners come to remove the weeds. The war had begun, and the galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest strength had always been knowing when not to show their strength. The first Vorthak border station simply stopped existing. No explosion, no debris field, no radiation signature. One moment, Forward Base Talon was a heavily armed military installation with 5,000 Vorthak soldiers. The next moment, there was empty space where the station had been, as if it had never existed at all. Supreme Commander Vrex stared at the tactical display aboard his flagship Dominator, trying to understand what he was seeing. Communications officer, contact Base Talon immediately. Sir, Base Talon is gone. What do you mean, gone? I mean it's not there anymore, sir. Our sensors show empty space. No wreckage, no energy readings, nothing. Before Vrex could respond, alerts began cascading across his command screens. Border stations throughout the sector were vanishing one by one, erased from existence by weapons that left no trace of their passing. Sir, we're receiving reports from all frontline positions. The humans are attacking with weapons we don't understand. Vrex growled deep in his throat. Impossible. Human technology is centuries behind ours. They build farming tools and medical equipment. Sir, you need to see this. The main display switched to a feed from one of their remaining observation posts. In the distance, shapes moved through space that hurt to look at. They seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, flickering in and out of normal space-time. What am I looking at? Vrex demanded. Human warships, sir. At least we think they are. Our sensors can't get a proper lock on them. As they watched, one of the impossible ships simply appeared next to a Vorthak patrol cruiser. There was no transition, no travel time. It was just suddenly there. The Vorthak ship fired everything it had at the human vessel, but the weapons passed through it like it was made of light. Then the human ship fired back. A beam of something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter struck the Vorthak cruiser. The ship didn't explode. It simply unraveled at the molecular level, coming apart like a piece of cloth being unwoven. All ships fall back to the inner defense grid, Vrex ordered. We need to regroup and assess this threat. But as his fleets tried to retreat, they discovered that the humans were already waiting for them. Captain Seungmin Che led Strike Force Alpha through the Helix Nebula, where a Vorthak battle group was attempting to reorganize. His ships moved like ghosts through space, appearing behind enemy formations before vanishing like smoke. The Vorthak had never faced enemies who could be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Target the command ship, Sungmin ordered. Use the quantum disruptors. The UES Phantom materialized directly above the Vorthak flagship. Instead of firing conventional weapons, it simply reached out with fields of twisted space-time and began taking the enemy ship apart, piece by piece. On the Vorthak bridge, Tactical Officer Grex watched his instruments go insane. Sir, the human ships are somehow existing in parallel dimensions. Our weapons can't touch them, but they can affect us normally. That's impossible, snarled Fleet Commander Krog. Physics doesn't work that way. Apparently human physics works differently than ours. Sir. Dr. Chang Ho Kim watched the battle from his research vessel Archimedes, which existed primarily in a parallel dimension where the laws of physics were more flexible. His breakthrough in multidimensional technology had been classified and filed away decades ago, deemed too dangerous for normal use. Now it gave humanity an insurmountable advantage. They could attack from dimensions where the Vorthak couldn't follow, retreat into spaces where enemy weapons couldn't reach them, and coordinate their efforts across multiple realities simultaneously. Dr. Kim, came Admiral Park's voice through the quantum communication system. How are our dimensional shields holding up? Perfectly, Admiral. The Vorthak are firing at where we used to be, not where we are. It's like fighting shadows. The battle raged for 6 hours, but it was never really a contest. The Vorthak had built their entire military doctrine around overwhelming firepower and brute force. They had never faced enemies who could simply step outside of normal reality whenever they chose. Within 12 hours of the first attack, the Vorthak had lost half their fleet. Worse, they had no idea how to fight back. Their most powerful weapons were useless against enemies they couldn't properly target. Supreme Commander Vrex sent desperate messages to the Vorthak hegemony's allies throughout the galaxy. The responses were swift and uniform. We regret that we cannot assist at this time. The humans have requested our neutrality in this conflict, and we choose to honor that request. But we have mutual defense treaties, Vrex protested. Those treaties are void if you initiated hostilities without our consent. Good luck. One by one, every species that had once supported Vorthak expansion abandoned them. Fear spread through the galaxy as other civilizations realized they were watching something unprecedented. Humanity wasn't just winning. They were doing it with technology that seemed to ignore fundamental laws of physics. The turning point came when the humans attacked the Vorthak home system itself. Admiral Sujin Park led a fleet of ships that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. They appeared in orbit around the Vorthak homeworld like avenging angels. Their weapons trained on military targets across the planet. This is Admiral Park of the Terran Federation. She broadcast on all frequencies. You wanted to see what humans are capable of without restraint. Observe and learn. What followed wasn't a bombardment. It was a demonstration. Human nanite swarms descended from orbit, but instead of destroying everything they touched, they selectively disassembled only military installations. Weapons factories came apart at the molecular level. Shipyards dissolved like sugar in water. Military command centers simply ceased to exist, but hospitals remained untouched. Schools continued to operate. Civilian housing was left completely alone. The humans were showing surgical precision that bordered on the miraculous. Impossible, whispered Vrex as he watched his planetary defenses simply vanish. How are they doing this? His science officer, Dr. Keth, stared at his readings in disbelief. Sir, the nanites appear to be making moral judgments. They're somehow distinguishing between military and civilian targets at the molecular level. Nanites don't have morals. Human nanites apparently do, sir. Across the Vorthak homeworld, the population watched in terror and amazement as their military might was systematically erased while their daily lives continued uninterrupted. Markets stayed open, transportation systems kept running, and communication networks remained active except for military channels. Supreme Commander Vrex found himself trapped in a bunker that was slowly being disassembled around him by machines too small to see. His weapons were gone, his ships were gone, his armies were gone, but the nanites had left him a working communicator. A message came through from the human fleet in orbit. Admiral Park's face appeared on his screen, her expression calm and professional. Supreme Commander Vrex, your military capacity has been neutralized. Your fleets have been destroyed or disabled. Your weapons are gone. Do you wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict? Vrex looked around at what remained of his command center. Through the windows, he could see Vorthak civilians going about their daily business, completely unharmed. The humans had dismantled his entire war machine while leaving his people's society intact. How? He asked simply. We told you, Commander. We chose to be farmers because we understood the value of life. But we never forgot that sometimes gardeners must remove the weeds that threaten the garden. Vrex realized he was facing something his species had never encountered. Enemies who were more powerful than the Vorthak, but who chose to use that power with restraint and precision. What do you want from us? Admiral Park's smile was cold as winter. We want you to understand that your education in human nature has only just begun. The lesson was clear. Humanity had held back their true capabilities for 2 centuries, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose mercy over destruction. Now the galaxy was learning what happened when that choice was taken away. President Nare Choi stood in the ruins of the Vorthak High Command on their homeworld, but it wasn't destruction that surrounded her. The building still stood, its architecture intact and beautiful. Every computer terminal worked perfectly. The lights were on, the air systems hummed quietly, and the communication networks functioned without interruption. What was gone was every single weapon, every piece of military technology, every tool of war that the Vorthak had built over centuries of conquest. The human nanites had taken them apart at the atomic level, leaving behind only the materials needed for peaceful existence. Citizens of the Vorthak hegemony, President Choi spoke into the cameras that would broadcast her message across their world. Your military leaders chose war over diplomacy. They chose conquest over cooperation. They chose to threaten genocide against peaceful farmers. Behind her, Supreme Commander Vrex sat in what had once been his command chair, now just a simple seat in an ordinary office. His weapons were gone, his armies scattered, his fleets disabled or destroyed, but he was alive and so were his people. We could have ended your civilization in minutes, President Choi continued. We have weapons that could have turned your worlds into ash, technology that could have erased you from history itself. Instead, we chose to show you the difference between power and wisdom. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Human forces had swept through Vorthak space like a tide, but instead of leaving destruction, they left transformation. Military bases became schools. Weapons factories were converted into medical research facilities. Warships were redesigned as exploration vessels. Captain Daeho Kim walked through the rebuilt New Busan colony, which now gleamed with architecture that seemed to defy physics. The city was more beautiful than it had ever been, a monument to human resilience and a warning to future aggressors. The memorial in the center of town listed the names of 3 million people who had died in the original attack. But around it grew gardens that fed the hungry, schools that taught alien children alongside human ones, and hospitals that healed anyone who needed help. Captain, said Dr. Hyunwoo Lee, joining him at the memorial, do you think they'll try again? The Vorthak? Daeho shook his head. Look around you, Doctor. We didn't just defeat them. We showed them a better way to live. Their children are learning human farming techniques alongside their own history. Their scientists are working with our researchers to develop better medical technology. Dr. Hyunwoo had been appointed as the first human coordinator of galactic agriculture, ensuring that food production served all species equally. His new research station orbited the Vorthak homeworld, a symbol of cooperation replacing conquest. The nanites are still in their systems, he observed. They could never build weapons again even if they wanted to. That's not why they won't try again, Daeho replied. They won't try again because we showed them that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty. Power doesn't have to mean oppression. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met an emergency session. The Great Chamber was packed with representatives from species across the galaxy, all trying to understand what they had witnessed. Ambassador Yeon Soo-ha stood at the central podium, fielding questions from beings who had watched their understanding of the universe change overnight. Ambassador, called Counselor Vex of the Rigelian Consortium, how long has humanity possessed these capabilities? Since before we left Earth, Counselor. We've always had the ability to build weapons of incredible destruction. We chose not to use them, but why? Asked Counselor Thrix of the Zenthari Empire. With such power you could have ruled the galaxy, because ruling through fear isn't ruling at all, Counselor. It's just organized bullying. We learned that lesson on our homeworld long before we reached the stars. Another representative stood. What happens now? Will humanity use these weapons to enforce your will on the rest of us? Ambassador Ha was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. Counselor Zex of the Planetary Alliance, humanity has had the power to conquer the galaxy for 2 centuries. Instead, we use that time to feed your people, heal your sick, and teach your children. Why would we change now? But you've shown that you can destroy any military force in the galaxy. Yes, we can. And now that everyone knows that, hopefully we'll never have to prove it again. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had revealed themselves as the apex predators of the galaxy. But they were apex predators who chose to tend gardens instead of hunting grounds. On the Vorthak homeworld, a different kind of transformation was taking place. Young Vorthak, who had never known anything but military conquest, were learning to grow food. To heal instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy. Kayla, a former Vorthak soldier, worked alongside human agriculturalists in fields that had once been military training grounds. Teacher Ha Jin, she asked, why didn't your people just kill us all? It would have been simpler. Teacher Ha Jin Park looked up from the grain they were planting. Because killing is easy, Kayla. Any species with enough technology can destroy. But creating life from barren ground, turning enemies into friends, building something better than what came before, that takes real strength. The young Vorthak considered this. Is that why you're called the most dangerous species in the galaxy now? We're not dangerous because we can destroy civilizations, Hajin replied. We're dangerous because we can change them. We can show them a better way to live. Back in human space, the great reveal continued. Agricultural ships resumed their normal routes, but now every species in the galaxy knew what they really were. Mobile fortresses capable of producing fleets that could challenge gods, operated by farmers who chose to grow wheat instead of graves. Admiral Sujin Park stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching supply convoys head out to refugee camps where former Vorthak soldiers were learning new trades. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving requests for defensive packs from 47 different species. Decline them all, Admiral Park replied. We're not interested in military alliances. Sir? Commander, those species watched us fight this war. They know what we're capable of. The best defense they can have is to make sure we never have reason to fight them. The transformation of galactic politics was swift and complete. Trade agreements with humanity became the most valuable diplomatic prizes in the galaxy. Species that had never shown interest in human culture suddenly wanted to learn human philosophy, human science, human agriculture. But it wasn't fear that drove this change. It was respect. Humanity had shown the galaxy something unprecedented. Absolute power combined with absolute restraint. Dr. Yujin Kwan published her research on Vorthak technology, making it freely available to any species that wanted to defend themselves. But she also included detailed analysis of human defensive systems, showing exactly how outclassed any potential aggressor would be. The message is clear, she wrote in her conclusion. Humanity doesn't seek to dominate the galaxy through force, but any species that chooses violence over diplomacy will face the consequences of that choice. Years later, historians would mark the end of the human-Vorthak conflict as the beginning of the longest period of galactic peace in recorded history. Not because war had become impossible, but because everyone understood the price of choosing warfare over cooperation. The Vorthak survivors thrived in their new society, building art and culture instead of weapons and conquest. Their children grew up learning that strength meant protecting the weak, not exploiting them. And throughout the galaxy, in schools and universities, in government halls and military academies, the lesson of humanity's final ultimatum was taught to every young being. The most dangerous predator is not the one that hunts constantly, but the one that chooses not to hunt until hunting becomes necessary. The garden was safe, tended by gardeners who had proven they remembered what they were before they chose to plant seeds instead of bury enemies. In the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal routes, carrying grain and medicine, teachers and doctors, hope and healing to every corner of the galaxy. They looked exactly as they always had, peaceful, harmless, dedicated to nurturing life. But now everyone knew the truth. Those gentle farmers were the apex predators of the galaxy, and their greatest strength was knowing when not to show their strength. The final ultimatum had been delivered, accepted, and understood. Peace reigned among the stars, protected by those who chose to be gardeners rather than warriors, but who had never forgotten how to reap what others had sown. 20 years after the Vorthak War, Ambassador Yeon Soo-ha stood in the peace gardens of Nexus Prime, watching children from a dozen different species play together in the afternoon sunlight. Human children ran alongside young Vorthak, while Xanthari younglings climbed trees planted by Regelian botanists. The gardens had been built on the site where the Galactic Council once met in fear. Now they served as a living reminder that even the darkest moments could bloom into something beautiful. Ambassador Ha, called a familiar voice. She turned to see Kyla approaching, no longer the frightened former Vorthak soldier she had once been. Now she wore the robes of a diplomatic attaché, representing her people in trade negotiations with the Terran Federation. Kala, Ambassador Ha smiled warmly. How did the agricultural summit go? Better than we hoped. The new grain varieties your people developed will increase food production on the Outer Rim worlds by 30%. The Hegemony Council voted unanimously to share the technology freely with any species that needs it. Ambassador Ha nodded approvingly. The former Vorthak hegemony had transformed itself into something unrecognizable from its military origins. They called themselves the Hegemony Council now, dedicated to healing the wounds they had once inflicted across the galaxy. And the Memorial Project? Kala's expression grew solemn. We've identified the locations of all 17 civilizations we destroyed. Construction begins next month on monuments at each site. Not just memorials to the dead, but living colonies where survivors and their descendants can return if they choose. The Kalani have already expressed interest, Ambassador Ha said. Dr. Lee's team discovered a seed vault on one of their destroyed worlds. They're working to restore their entire ecosystem. Dr. Hyunwoo Lee had become something of a legend in xenoarchaeology, using his agricultural expertise to bring dead worlds back to life. Where once there had been only ash and silence, gardens now bloomed with species thought extinct forever. A chime from Ambassador Ha's communicator interrupted their conversation. Excuse me, Kayla, this is from Earth Command. The message was brief but significant. President Choi would be visiting Nexus Prime next week for the dedication of the new Galactic Cooperation Center. It would be her first trip off Earth since the war ended. Good news? Kala asked. Very good. The president is coming for the dedication ceremony. I think she wants to see what we've built with the peace we fought for. Across the galaxy, that peace had taken many forms. Captain Daeho Kim now commanded the UES Harmony, a ship designed specifically for first contact missions with newly discovered species. His crew included former Vorthak warriors who had retrained as diplomats and cultural specialists. Captain, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Tae-woo Shin, we're receiving a signal from the unexplored Kepler 442 system. It appears to be from an intelligent species. Are they asking for help or offering trade? Daeho asked. Neither, sir. They're asking if we're the humans they've heard about. The ones who beat the Vorthak but didn't destroy them. Daeho smiled.
Humanity's reputation had spread far beyond the boundaries of known space.
Stories of the farmers who could fight like gods but chose to heal instead of harm had become legend among species that had never even seen a human. Tell them we are, Lieutenant, and ask if they'd like to learn how to grow better crops. Dr. Chang-ho Kim worked in his laboratory on Luna Station, developing new applications for multidimensional technology. But instead of weapons, he focused on peaceful uses. Transportation systems that could move supplies instantly across the galaxy, communication networks that connected distant worlds in real time, medical devices that could heal injuries by borrowing healthy tissue from parallel dimensions. Dr. Kim, his assistant, Dr. Yunseo Park, called from across the lab. The Vorthak Science Academy is requesting copies of our latest dimensional agriculture research. Send them everything, Chang-ho replied without looking up from his work. Include the safety protocols and the ethical guidelines. Sir, this technology could be weaponized. Chang-ho finally looked up, his expression serious. Dr. Park, 20 years ago, we proved that humanity could build weapons that bend reality itself. Do you think the galaxy has forgotten that lesson? No, sir. Then they understand that our strength comes not from hiding our knowledge but from choosing how to use it. The Vorthak can build dimensional weapons if they want to. They won't because they've learned there are better uses for such power. On the Vorthak homeworld, now renamed Kellar in honor of their first victim species, Former Supreme Commander Vrex tended a garden that had once been his military command center. The elderly Vorthak moved slowly among the plants, but his hands were gentle as he cared for flowers that bore the names of every civilization his forces had destroyed. A group of young Kalar visited him daily, children of the species his people had thought extinct. They called him Grandfather Vrex and listened to his stories about the old days, learning the importance of choosing peace over power. Grandfather asked little Sira, a Kalar child with bright purple eyes, "Why did the humans let you live?" Vrex paused in his gardening, considering his words carefully. "Because they understood something I didn't, little one. They knew that the strongest warriors are the ones who fight to protect life, not to end it. But you were their enemy." "Yes, I was. But they saw that I could become something better. Just like these flowers." He gestured to the garden around them. "This ground was once poisoned by weapons and war. Now it grows beauty instead of death." The child considered this seriously. "So the humans are gardeners?" "The best kind, Sira. They plant seeds of hope even in the darkest soil." Back on Earth, in the same Colorado bunker where the war had been planned, General Tae-Hyung Moon conducted his final briefing before retirement. The weapon systems that had once seemed so important were now museum pieces, displayed to remind future generations of humanity's capacity for destruction. The lesson of the Vorthak War, he told the young officers assembled before him, is not that we can build terrible weapons. It's that we can choose not to use them. Colonel Sora Kim, now promoted to general, raised her hand. "Sir, what if another species like the Vorthak emerges? What if diplomacy fails again?" General Moon was quiet for a moment. "Then we will do what we have always done, General. We will defend the innocent, protect the weak, and show our enemies that there is a better way to live. And if they refuse to learn, we will teach them why gardeners are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." The meeting ended, and General Moon walked through the corridors of the facility one last time. The weapons were still there, maintained and ready, sleeping in their underground vaults. Humanity's capacity for ultimate destruction remained intact, but it served now as a guardian rather than a sword. President Narai Choi stood before the United Earth Assembly, delivering her final State of the Union address before stepping down from office. Behind her, a display showed images from across human space, thriving colonies, peaceful trade routes, diplomatic missions to newly contacted species. 20 years ago, she began, we faced a choice that could have defined humanity for millennia. We could have become conquerors using our hidden strength to dominate the galaxy through fear. Instead, we chose to remain what we had always been, gardeners who tend the stars. The assembly erupted in applause, but President Choi raised her hand for silence. But let no one mistake our choice for weakness. The weapons that ended the Vorthak threat still exist. The technology that allowed us to fight in multiple dimensions simultaneously remains at our disposal. We remain the apex predators of the galaxy, and that responsibility weighs heavily on every human soul. She paused, looking out at the representatives of humanity's worlds. We are the gardeners of the galaxy not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose nurture over destruction. We are the defenders of the innocent not because we must be, but because we choose to be. And we are the teachers of peace not because we cannot wage war, but because we remember the cost of war. The president's final words echoed through the chamber and across the galaxy. We are human. We remember what we were, we choose what we are, and we build what we will become. The garden is eternal, and we are its guardians. As the years passed and new generations grew up in the peace that strength had purchased, the lesson of humanity's final ultimatum became part of galactic culture. In schools across 1,000 worlds, children learned that the most powerful species in the galaxy were farmers who chose to grow life instead of taking it. The Vorthak rebuilt their civilization around principles of healing and growth. The species they had once conquered were restored to new homes among the stars. And humanity continued its ancient work of planting seeds in the cosmic garden, tending to life wherever it grew, and standing ready to defend the peaceful against any who would threaten them. The final ultimatum had been delivered, accepted and transformed into something greater than victory. A promise that in a galaxy full of darkness, there would always be gardeners willing to plant lights among the stars. The garden was eternal and humanity would tend it forever.